Jarvis Masters has steadfastly maintained his innocence since he was sentenced to death almost 30 years ago.
There are innocent people on death row.
Newly uncovered evidence bolsters those claims of innocence.
I really believe if they found that weapon, I would not have been charged for murder.
You be the judge on Dear Governor, the podcast.
No one knows what a day feels like innocent on death row.
Listen to Dear Governor on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
Now let's get this party started.
You're listening to Fox.
Eight, 7 yesterday, 8 tonight. Maybe not tonight because of the schedules. Maybe tomorrow. It's fantastic. But one of the things that really struck me is that Michael Jordan intimidated people. And Michael Jordan, he through his imagery, through his relentlessness, you didn't mess around with Michael. When he walked into a room very early in his career, Michael had a feeling, don't mess with me. And you can sense that, right? You can sense weak people. You can sense strong people. You can sense confident people. You can sense people lacking confidence. It's body language. It's their words. And so, according to Woj, top NBA reporter guy, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver is not testing asymptomatic players in the NBA. He won't do it because he's worried how the imagery looks that they're hoarding tests. What? That's you got a $300 billion enterprise. I mean, it's probably worth $1 trillion. I mean, what is the NBA worth? Similarly, a report this morning, Dana White and the UFC have 1,200 corona tests. They're fighting this weekend, and they don't care what you think. Because people on Twitter prey on the weak, and Dana White doesn't give a rip what you think. So he's not worried about it. And the sports with backbone and good leadership, NASCAR, UFC, WWE, NFL, those are the sports that are like, listen, these are billion-dollar businesses. Get us tests. First of all, anybody in California that wants to be tested can. We're the biggest state in the country, biggest economy, very complex. This is not Rhode Island. This is a hard state. It's not Oregon. It's not West Virginia. 40 million people here. And our mayor, L.A., if you want to be tested, you can. We don't have a mask issue. We don't have a ventilator issue. You want to be tested? Governor said, we've got the tests. Okay, so let's stop with that. Nobody can get a test. Everybody I know in my life, small town, big city, has been tested that feels they need to be tested. 99% of them don't need to be tested. They haven't had it. But would you be outraged? I found out very early that policemen and firemen in my community had been tested. All right, they should be. I found out very early that a grocery store worker I knew, she was tested. Nobody was outraged. Would you be outraged if airline employees were tested? They're flying us all around. Or politicians who are running the country? No. Nobody be outraged. And nobody's going to be outraged if the NBA has 1,000 tests to start the season because everybody misses sports. And the people that are outraged hate the NBA, irrelevant, if you're Adam Silver. And the second group, anonymous, shamers on Twitter, equally irrelevant. But this constant imagery of Adam Silver walking on eggshells around players and owners, it comes off as weak. Yesterday, Roger Goodell Strong leadership. Remember, Roger Goodell got blowback on free agency. No, he didn't care. It was a home run. He got blowback, even from NFL reporters on the draft. He didn't care. It's called strong leadership. It was a home run. You got to have a backbone during this stuff because there's shamers and heat-seeking panic missiles all over the internet. Block them, mute them, don't listen. We're not going to have 0 cases. It's not going to happen. There's going to be deaths. It stinks. You can't sit around and worry constantly about perception. And the people that don't, Roger Goodell yesterday said no commenting on the season, no speculation. It's 5 months out. That's ridiculous. That's called leadership. Dana White's called leadership. Companies with strong leaders are going to flourish in this thing. And it makes me this morning, and I've made no predictions on this. All I know is masks work and social distancing works. Of course masks work. If you and I are wearing a mask, you don't think that's going to cut down on the spread of a virus? Of course it works. And social distancing obviously works. That's all I know. The only prediction I've made for sports, SEC football is going to happen. It may not happen in September. It may be October, November, but it's going to happen. Outside of that, no prediction. But that this morning by Adam Silver, that kind of concern about imagery, that's the kind of stuff that makes me think the NBA season's over. I'm not predicting it, but because the people that are going to survive here in sports, you got to have a little bit of a backbone. You can't be worried about all the shamers on social media. You can't. I mean, if you say, I think we should kickstart the economy slowly with social distancing, I mean, it's an avalanche. Tyranny of the mob. They attack you. You better be strong. And Adam Silver, it's my only knock on him. I think he's smart. I think he's a good guy. Sometimes he comes across as weak, as paralyzed by Twitter, consumed by what his players think of him. You're the commissioner. Owners are your boss. Players are not your bosses. Owners are your bosses. So I saw this story. The Cincinnati Bengals don't have a very great history, and they said yesterday, we were not moving off that first pick for Joe Burrow. You know what? The more I thought about it, the more I was like, all right. I'm really interested in what their schedule looks like because I think Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, they're the kind of team that could be helped if their schedule is soft early. If Burrow, who's going to be forced to start, can start with Washington or the New York Giants, get a couple of those games at home, it's like, all right, Miami early, all right. So the NFL schedule released tonight. Cincinnati's a team I'm really going to look at. But you know what's funny about this whole thing? And I get why Cincinnati picked him. He's an Ohio kid. They don't have any equity built up with their fans. He's a good prospect. You can certainly argue. I don't think he's the best prospect. I think it's Tua. But you can certainly argue Burrow over Tua. I'm okay with that. I mean, if you think that, that's fine. I think they're fairly close. I just think Tua's a more natural sort of athlete and was good from day one, high school, college. I like him more. But injuries, blah, blah, blah. But what's funny about this is the blowback I get when I say, I think Joe Burrow, I think he's going to struggle. Sports gives us, like nothing else, a roadmap of what's going to happen. And we keep not listening. The reason I was so right on the Cleveland Browns, Freddie Kitchens would be fired, Baker wouldn't be as good as the number one pick should, John Dorsey wouldn't last, was because of Cleveland's history. Let's see, an undersized, cocky, bad judgment, police video, two-time walk-on will not be good enough to overcome the NFL's most poorly owned franchise. That was difficult? Oh, yeah, they hired Freddie Kitchens as a coach. He'd never been a coordinator. Nobody in the league had ever offered him a coordinator job. That sealed it. And I got nothing but crap. And, of course, I was right in all of it. Not because I'm smart, not because I'm a magician, not because I'm Copperfield or David Blaine. It's because of history. Sports keeps telling us what's going to happen. Believe it. Russell Wilson will make the playoffs this year. Bank on it. Matt Patricia and the Lions will not. Bank on it. If you go look at the last 8 quarterbacks who've come from college to the pro that have succeeded, and by succeeded I mean a winning record, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, Dak, and Mitch Trubisky. Don't love Trubisky, but whatever. They all have a couple of things in common. They either have a really good coach. Matt Nagy is a really good coach. Trubisky's a real average talent. They either have a good coach, a good roster, or a good organization. Hopefully more than one, sometimes two, maybe sometimes three. I don't think Deshaun Watson has a great organization, but Bill O'Brien is a good coach. He's a terrible GM, and I think the roster is pretty good. Joe Burrow is entering a bad roster, a bad owner, a brutal division, and he's going to be forced to start day one. He's going to struggle. I'm not a magician. Like, sports keeps telling us what's going to happen. Russell Westbrook is never going to lead a team to an NBA championship. His style in the postseason, it's not built for it. That's not what basketball is in the postseason. A low percentage shooting, ball-centric guard who wears everybody out and plays in a tunnel. He's fun over the course of a regular season. In a volume regular season, he's wildly entertaining, worth paying to see. But when you shorten the season down to specific games and specific moments, he's a low percentage-centric, ball-centric, low percentage shooting guard who is hard to play with. That doesn't equal championships. So the Joe Burrow stuff, Cincinnati schedule, I am very, very interested tonight. And I do think they may get a little bit of a break, which would help Joe Burrow, but he's going to struggle. And we just all need to get used to that. Like, that's going to happen, and it's not hard to see. Sports keeps telling us and giving us roadmaps. Here it comes. Coming up next, two things. There's an NFL player, and his story is remarkable, but he needs to retire because I can't watch his games. I'm not going to be able to stomach his games. I can't watch him. And he's a great guy. And he's been on the show. And he's a nice guy. I can't watch him. Somebody has to step in. Talk about that coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
This Mother's Day, 1-800-Flowers, limited delivery. Step on it. Beautiful Mother's Day gifts, bouquets, 1-800-Flowers.com. Enter the code HERD. So Alex Smith got injured not long ago, and it was traumatic. He had 17 surgeries. They were worried that his leg was going to be amputated. In fact, they were concerned he was going to die. The government let him go to a military hospital because it was more similar to a war injury. His wife, 36th birthday today, his wife put out a video of him working out. And I watched the video. I will not be able to watch Alex Smith play this season. I can't see him get hurt. Alex Smith has had a really nice career. He's made $173 million. He was a number one pick. He is a 94-66 record. 5 playoff appearances, won a division, no losing seasons in a decade. This video his wife sent out is amazing, but if you watch Project 11, the documentary, it is, I can't watch the whole thing. I know I come across here as, too touchy-feely, but I can't. He's had a great career. He's made a ton of money. I don't think Washington right now needs him. Dan Snyder, I've been told, Dan Snyder has offered him an executive job. He's been offered in the organization an upper-level VP executive job. That's how much Dan Snyder respects him. He could get a broadcasting job tomorrow and I won't speak for my bosses, but if Alex Smith was on the market, you'd be crazy not to hire him. Super nice guy, gets along with others, really smart. I mean, he's played in the NFC, he's played in the AFC. The video of him coming back, and I've had him on the show before, he has a legendarily good reputation in the NFL. He's a great guy. I can't watch him play. I would be on pins and needles watching him play. I couldn't do it. So as the team doctors in Washington make a decision, almost had his leg amputated, and many people were concerned he would die. And I watched that video this morning. I'm like, oh, God, retire. Please. It just sit it down. A lot of money, beautiful family, stunning wife, a lot of money, number one pick, 5 playoffs, won a division title, 58% winner. Don't play. Sometimes people have to step in and help you because it's hard to manage us. Men are hard to manage, right? We manage our money. Men manage their money better than they manage themselves. That's why Wall Street and prisons are full of men, as my dad once said. Sometimes people have to step in because we get tunnel vision. We get very competitive. We can't see the broader horizon. I don't want to see Alex Smith play. I really don't. I sat there and watched the video. I'm like, if he plays, I gotta watch. I'll watch the Bengals games. I can't watch him.
I told you I watched the documentary the other day. It's fascinating, but it is terrifying.
Terrifying.
I'm rooting for him. It's hard not to root for him. I mean, he has a very resilient spirit. I would be very nervous watching him play as well. It would be an amazing comeback story. You really should watch it. There's a point. I'm like I get queasy with that stuff. I mean, he's been through a lot.
By the way, I did watch episode 7 of The Last Dance last night. It has everything in it, Joy. It's got the murder of Michael's father. It's got Michael's retirement announcement. What a circus that was. It's got his baseball career, and it's got Michael breaking down. Michael gets really emotional. It is, I mean, you can see his eyes. Like, he gets really emotional. So it's easily the best episode I've seen, episode 7 Sunday night on another network. Here's Joy with the news.
No. Turn on the news.
This is the Herd Line News.
They are getting better.
Oh, I think they're getting better. Yeah, and I'm going to watch. I think I'm going to watch the NFL schedule stuff tonight. Then Friday night or Saturday, I'm going to watch the episode 8.
I can't wait for it. So the Cowboys brought in Andy Dalton to work with Dak Prescott next season. And Stephen Jones told 1310 The Ticket in Dallas that he feels a lot better now that they have a solid backup plan.
To have a guy like Andy Dalton come in here, not unlike Philly had with Nick Foles when Carson Wentz went down, to be able to take control and, win games or win huge games for you, if that's what you need, is really important. Certainly, you can lay your head on your pillow better at night knowing you have someone like Andy Dalton.
Sleeping better, are we? Well, Dak Prescott doesn't have an injury history, so that's not really the concern. Obviously, having a strong backup in Philly is very important considering Carson Wentz's injury history.
It's
so
interesting,
what is it that we're referring to?
Yeah.
I'm a huge Dak fan, as you know, and I think Dak deserves all the money he can get, and he certainly deserves to be paid. But if I'm Dak Prescott, I'm signing a deal. That was clearly a message bringing in Andy Dalton. I feel. I mean, you'd like to have a nice backup, but Andy Dalton is probably a starter in this league still. I mean, I'm not going to hold everything that happened in Cincinnati against him. He did make the playoffs quite a few times, despite the dysfunction that organization has been over the past 20 years. I don't know the entire situation with Dak in Dallas, but it does kind of feel like it's almost getting to the point of I don't want to say overvaluing yourself, because you should get whatever money the market dictates, but there's not a huge gap. I think we agree between Andy Dalton and Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I think Dak's better, but I don't think it's...
absolutely. He's better, and he has more upside, and he's younger, and all of those things. But the last thing you want to happen is, God forbid, there is some sort of injury situation. Andy Dalton comes in and plays his butt off, and then that's a whole other
Andy
scenario.
Dalton he's like the Mr. Rogers of the NFL. Who would have thought Andy Dalton could ever get in the crosshairs of controversy? He is the least controversial human in American professional sports. And now,
he really is.
Now all of a sudden there's this polarizing thing. I think you said this. He basically called Dak yesterday. He texted him a couple days ago, said, "Hey, I'm here to help if you need anything." He's the nicest guy in the world.
He is. What was his like rally cry before the game?
Yeah, it was.
Let's have some fun and play together.
I ran into him one time at a JW Marriott in Los Angeles, and I've been critical of a lot of people, and I bump into him. I don't care. It's the only time I felt guilty. He is such a nice human being. I ran into Andy Dalton and I said I can never criticize him. It was like 2-3 years ago. I'm like I felt so guilty.
Well, we're not being personal.
I know, but
critical.
I called him the beige water pistol. That's kind of personal.
You did.
And I
That's
felt
true.
the only time in my career I'm like, that was mean. I wanted to apologize and give him a big hug.
That's the only time.
No, I mean, most of the time, if I rip T.O., I bring him on the show. T.O. and I go back and forth, or LeVar Ball, or Richie Incognito. I have no problem confronting if Russell Westbrook came on my show, or Baker. You can yell at me all you want. I don't care.
We had Baker on.
Yes, that doesn't bother me. But I felt guilt because Andy Dalton is America's nicest human, and I was mean.
Teddy Bruschi won 3 Super Bowls with Tom Brady in New England, and he has some advice for the Buccaneers, and it's to not get caught up in a superstar joining their team. In an interview with ESPN, he said they need to get over Brady watching. because they get to the sideline and all of a sudden it's like, okay, Tom will bail us out. If those players see him as that 4-letter word, they better get over it. He's on a level plane as you, because he's going to make mistakes and he's also going to make you better, and it can't be done without you. So don't look to him to do it. Our teams never did. The 4-letter word he's referring to is GOAT.
Oh, yeah, GOAT. That's the 4-letter word.
Well, I mean, listen, I think it's going to be very difficult for any of these young players to not look at Tom Brady in that way. That's the conversation that we've been having about Tom Brady for many years. And he is still Tom Brady and still has the presence and aura about him. But I do get what Teddy Bruschi's saying. Once the season starts, once you get into the actual games, you can't just lean on him being the GOAT to bail the team out or and you get in tough situations. Obviously look at him to be a leader, but you have to do your job as well. I could see how young players could get caught up in that and get a little distracted. Finally, Dwayne Haskins wrote an article for Washington's team website reflecting on his rookie year and how he's been preparing this offseason, and he noticed that the team seems to be going into the 2020 season with a different mindset. He said, a lot of times last year I thought we were dragging. This year I feel a new sense of urgency. That's what is fun about football. It's the want to play your very best in every situation. That's something I think is important as far as trying to be able to compete with the best of the best teams in the NFL. If you don't think you have a fighting chance, there's no way you're going to win. Ron Rivera says he thinks that he believes the team can make a quicker turnaround than he and many others have expected. Well, I think their defense certainly will, but we are all going to be all eyes on Dwayne Haskins this year to see if he really has what it takes to be the quarterback of the Washington Redskins. I don't know that I've seen anything from Dwayne Haskins yet that convinces me of that.
He's big and strong with a big, strong arm, so if he gets protection, I think he can be fine. I just don't know if they can protect him now that Trent Williams is gone. But if you told me he's going to stand back, throw 24 times a game in Ron's system, pretty conservative offense, and throw strikes, then I think he can work. That's where I think he can work.
If he can be accurate and make good decisions, then sure. I don't really get caught up in the body type of quarterbacks anymore, because I think for the most part, if you have the skill and the football intelligence, you don't really need that particular body type and arm strength and all of those things. I'd rather you be accurate and make good decisions in crunch time moments. But that's what I'm hoping to see from Dwayne Haskins this year.
Good stuff, Joy, with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
So here's the show I'm on tonight. Carissa Thompson, Mark Schlereth, and me. NFL schedule release show. It's going to be on all the Fox Sports social media stuff. FoxSports.com, I'll be on it. The Fox Sports app. So that's going to be 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. I'll be from my house, from my secluded grotto. I'll be in my house broadcasting this. And, there you go. Schedule release. There's a handful of schedules I'm very interested in. I want to see Cincinnati's. The way it looks like they're going to stack it up, I've been reading this, is that your non-conference games, non-division games are going to be first. So, if you play the AFC East, you're going to have the Jets and you're going to have the Patriots in the Bills and Miami in some sort of order. So I think it's fun. I do think schedule matters. In fact, one of the things I do when the season ends, I release what I believe are my standings based on free agent signings and draft signings. So I can release those. And then I release schedules because after the season ends, you have coaching changes. Like Washington's got a new staff. You have free agent signings, and then you have the draft. And so, then I think it's time to predict the NFL divisions. Then I give myself the opportunity post-schedule and post-camp. Because if you lose, you lose your star left tackle, it's not the same team. So I will show you at the top of the hour, I will give you my post-free agency, post-coaching changes, post-draft predictions for the NFC and AFC. I'll give you that top of next hour. And then I'm going to wait for the schedule to come out, and I'm not going to take a team like Indianapolis 10-5. But I do think momentum is huge in football, and if you have Joe Judge and Daniel Jones and it's brutal in September, it can absolutely make a difference. You fall into an 0-4, 1-3 hole for a new staff and a young quarterback, It's rough. It's hard to overcome. It's easy for New England to experiment in September. They've got all the equity and all the confidence and all the things they can go back into and dip into. Maurice Jones-Drew, NFL Network broadcaster, played for a decade in the NFL, 8 for the Jags and 1 for the Raiders, and a 3-time Pro Bowler is joining us this morning. By the way, it looks like, not that the Jags are a fascinating national topic, but it does appear they're sort of tanking. When you were there, they were viable, and they won games. I can't say tanking, Maurice, because it's hard to tank in football, but it does look like, how about this? They're looking to next year's draft. Is that fair?
I would say they're rebuilding. I think in business we call it pivoting.
Yeah.
And it happens at a lot of different networks. It happens at a lot of different businesses. You decide to go one direction. In that direction, they were getting a lot of talented players, a lot of personalities in that locker room. Those players and that staff got them to the AFC Championship game. They swung for the fences the next couple of years, didn't make it, and now they're going to pivot into a different direction. It does suck, though, being a Jags fan when you're that close, right? And you come back and now you're part of a rebuild again. And in my career, early on, we were winning games, and I was part of a couple of rebuilds because we weren't winning consistently. And it's disheartening at some points, but you just hope that they hit on some guys and that they can keep, building and keeping their guys there, which is the most important. It's hard to win games when you draft in the top 10, 8 or 9 years or 10 years in a row, and only 2 of those guys are on your roster.
So Cam Newton, most believe, is more talented than Teddy Bridgewater or Nick Foles. But Nick Foles has a job. Marcus Mariota has a job. Case Keenum keeps finding work. Teddy Bridgewater, who I like more than most people, gets a starting job, and Cam doesn't have a gig. Now, I have a theory on it. For years and years, I was told by sources inside the building, sometimes he was distracted. Sometimes he was a little dramatic. He was not the easiest guy to coach. That's why Ron Rivera went to Washington and traded up to get his backup, Kyle Allen. So, but does it surprise you that Cam Newton, a former MVP, there's no job for him? None. Doesn't appear to be any market.
Yeah, I'm very surprised. And for me, it comes down to, do you want to win or not? And to be quite frank with you, Colin, coaches don't win games. Coaches, you can get out coached and lose games, but to be honest, it's those players on the field that win games. And how can you tell for a franchise or your fans that you're doing your best when one of the best players are out there and you don't have a quarterback, or you're playing with a guy that, may not be the best, and you have a better option out there. And so I believe Cam Newton will end up finding a job. The last 2 years, I know that everyone's going to talk about the last 2 years, but one, he played through a shoulder injury for his team, and yet we don't talk about that. And then last year, he played with a Liz Frank injury, which I had as a player, which is arguably one of the toughest injuries to play with. And I watched him battle with his teammates the first couple of weeks until he couldn't battle anymore. And so to say that he's not a team player like some have said, or he's about self, that doesn't show me that. Those 2 instances right there don't show me that. He played hurt for his team to try to help his team.
So what does it tell you when Ron Rivera has no interest? And by the way, Sean McDermott, good young coach at Buffalo, no interest. He'd be a perfect back. But what does it tell you?
Well, I think those teams have, obviously Ron Rivera's going into the Redskins where you have Dwayne Haskins, and possibly it may be he needs to see what Dwayne can do first. Yeah. There's other teams out. I mean, the Patriots are obviously the obvious team, and the Chicago Bears, like you mentioned, teams that don't have a quarterback. I would even say the Pittsburgh Steelers, to be quite frank with you, should look into having Cam Newton, because the fact that you don't know what Big Ben is he going to come back being Big Ben? And the fact that, he's been banged up as well. And so there's a lot of teams out there that I think should be taking a look at Cam, some with quarterbacks that, aren't the greatest quality of starter, but, they're getting paid as such, and it makes sense. But for me, it comes down to, if you want to win games, you're just going to get talented players. And as a coach, I firmly believe a coach is not just a play caller. A coach is a manager of personalities and expectations. A coach is a mentor. A coach is a teacher. A coach is a therapist. You have to have all those things as being. You just can't coach and call plays. That's not what this is about. And so the ones who get that, they're always successful, and you see that throughout certain careers and certain trajectories of franchises. Those coaches understand that. The ones that just want to call plays and do those other things, that's not a part of it. It's not like playing Madden where I can just call plays and pick button X. You have to be you have to manage expectations and personalities. And Cam Newton is a big personality, yes, but he's also a winner. He's a guy that took a Carolina roster offensively that wasn't the best to a 15-1 record with a really good defense to the Super Bowl. I think Cam can get back to that and play at that level, personally.
You know, it's the NBA, stars run the league, and in baseball, they have 8- and 10-year contracts. The NFL, stars can get cut. It's the reality of the business model. Now, the good news for the NFL is that gives owners and the commissioners more leverage. And I look at the NFL right now, and, you know, Roger Goodell's saying no comments on the season. It's 5 months out. Don't speculate. You don't have any idea. I don't have any idea. Stop the speculation. And I look at the NFL and I think to myself, if players are given the option, you're going to play through this virus and get paid, or you're not going to get paid. My gut feeling is football is uniquely built where the organization has more leverage over the professional athlete than baseball, international soccer, NBA. I think there'll be an NFL season. In a locker room full of players, if the virus was in a second wave, you know, you're a young pro athlete. It's not as vigorous as it was a month ago, but there's some cases out there. How do you think the average NFL player would address it and think about it, and how cautious would they be, or would they want to play?
Well, I think it depends on, you know, the age for sure, and the security that whichever player has, right? So if I'm a player that's been battling to stay on rosters and you know, I'm you know, at the bottom of the roster, I want to play. If I'm a young player, I want to play. I want to get out there. If I'm a superstar or a veteran that has security, I want to make sure things are safe before I go out there, right? And so I believe there'll be a season. And I think that the league is going to handle it the way they always have. They're always going to hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And so they're making sure right now that as they put the schedule out tonight at 8 p.m. on NFL Network, that it's going to be the full season. And then they'll make adjustments as they go forward. And I mean, that's the only way you can handle this pandemic right now, because you just don't know. Early when this thing started, it wasn't that big of a deal, and then it became a big deal. And, you know, people have been, you know, stuck in their houses and not allowed to really go out and do a lot of things here for the last couple months. And so all you can do as a player is be prepared for whatever may happen and voice your concerns. And make sure when you voice those that the PA backs you and voices those as well, and then they come to agreement with the NFL and they make it work.
Yeah. It's such a unique time. Are you in California right now?
I'm actually in Florida right now.
How is it in Florida right now? Because they're opening stuff up. What is the sense you get?
I'm down in South Florida, so it's similar to California where they've locked a lot of it down still. And it's because, again, Miami's, Fort Lauderdale, those are big tourist attraction cities. And so they want to make sure, and you have to be, sometimes you have to make sure. And I was in Los Angeles right before this thing kind of blew up. And so, those places that have a lot of people that are close, like New York and these major, San Francisco, these major cities, they have to do, bigger precautions than I think, small town places in middle America or anywhere. Right. So Florida is kind of different because the top of Florida, northern Florida to about Orlando is open. You can do whatever you want. South Florida, you're locked down.
Yeah.
So restaurants aren't open and things like that. And you just have to try to find. I always tell people, because I have two family members who have passed away from the coronavirus or effects of it. And you just have to take care of yourself. Understand that this is serious. I've heard all the different things about it. At the end of the day, people are dying, and we have to make sure that we take care of ourselves as best we can.
Sorry to hear that, Maurice Jones-Drew. Love having you on. NFL Network tonight has their schedule release. I've always enjoyed the schedule release. I'm kind of a wonky NFL fan. I love all this stuff. So, Maurice, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem, Colin. Also, I just want to tell all your listeners, I've been doing IG Lives. They can follow me on Instagram at m.jonesdrew32, and I've been doing IG Lives with a bunch of players, teams, and then answering a lot of questions as well, just because, again, we're all at home and everyone's trying to create content just to give fans more of an insight. If they'd love to follow me and be able to, when I do, I'll start up on Monday again. When, if they want to answer questions or have questions answered, I have no problem doing that.
Thanks, man.
No problem. Maybe you can come on with me one time.
I was on a 45-minute Zoom conference call yesterday with North Dakota University athletic director talking to their student athletes, so I'm always available. There you go.
All right, Colin, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Yeah. So Michael Jordan, Episode 7, something jumped out to me last night when I saw it. I'll have that coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Geico, they're sharing more. Geico's sharing more. Geico Give Back, 15% credit car and motorcycle policies, both current and new customers. Last your full policy term. Go to geico.com/giveback for info and eligibility. So, by the way, Jay Cutler and Christine Cavallari, is that her name, Joy?
Kristen.
Cavallari. She called him lazy and unmotivated and dumped him. My wife doesn't care about sports. And yesterday she said, she goes, I was reading about that Jay Cutler guy. He doesn't seem like a very nice person. And I said, well, he didn't have the world's greatest reputation as a player. I've met him one time in my life, and I've had him on the show a couple times. He's just like you talk about this. He's just a different personality. He's just, you watch that show and you're like, he's a lot of work. By the way, I think she's going to find love somewhere. I'm just guessing on that. But she's like driven, beautiful, smart. She's not going to struggle. She's going to find her Prince Charming. That's my big prediction for what is it?
Kristen Cavallari.
Kristen Cavallari. Anybody that's that beautiful, that hardworking, smart, driven, she just dumped him because he was lazy. That's what she said.
I have no idea what goes on in their household, but yes, she is beautiful. She's a businesswoman.
She's a go-getter.
She's got her stuff together.
Yeah.
Hopefully they both find love. How's that?
Yeah, that's great. I'm more interested in hers.
There's someone for everyone. Yeah.
She is a go-getter.
She is. She's brilliant.
I'd like to bring her on the show. I watched that show, and she is just go, 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 go. Energy. Like, you go, girl. I like it.
She probably, I don't know if she's doing press right now, but.
I'd bring her on the show. I'd bring Jay on the show. Let's talk about it. There's stuff going on with Earl Thomas. I'm willing to talk about all of it. Oh, Lord. My wife always says, don't go where you shouldn't go, and don't do what you shouldn't do. Earl Thomas.
Those are great rules for life in general.
Yes, they are. Don't go where you shouldn't go, Earl.
It's an avoidable situation.
So I watched a report today that Michael Jordan would not allow Horace Grant to eat after he had bad Bulls games. That story came out today. He would not let him eat. So, listen, I watched episode 7, and Michael Jordan picked on the nice guys. He picked on Horace Grant. Horace Grant's a nice guy. He picked on Scotty Burrell. Scotty Burrell's a nice guy. He picked on him. And you can say that's mean, but as I've said before, when you see what Michael went through, it really comes down to this. Michael gets very emotional in episode 7. He talks about his father's passing. He talks about baseball. He talks about retirement. And he talks a little bit about being mean. And at one point, Jason Hare, the documentarian, asks him, people don't always think of you as a nice guy. And I think it bothers Michael. He gets very emotional about it. But Saban and Belichick come across sometimes as brutal. It's not life, it's sports. Tiger Woods could be brutal. Kobe could be brutal. MJ could be brutal. They're not dictators, okay? They're just athletes and coaches. And sports has standings, winning and losing. And Michael Jordan was better. He knew he was better than Larry Bird, and he knew he was better than Magic Johnson because he was playing against him. And he was going out against the Dominique Wilkins. He was going out against the best players, and he was dominating. They could not stop him. So if you know that you're better than people, and you know the way to be the greatest all time is to do something they haven't, win 3 straight championships, And you've won 2, and you go into that third year, and guys get sloppy and lazy. Because let's be honest, most people get content. Most people get comfortable. You give people a little money, I've seen it in my business, and they're content, and they're lazy, and they don't work as hard, and they think, I got this job for life. And, of course, in our business, you don't have any job for life. The platforms change, the bosses change, cultures change, schedules change, stock prices change. And so Michael got into a situation where he was beating all these players individually. They couldn't touch him. And he's thinking, they've all won a couple of championships. Nobody's won 3 straight. I'm going to be that guy. And to be that guy in those third seasons, he was brutal. He was brutal. And I look at it and I'm like, I'm okay with it. Sports has standings. Winners and losers. There's no safety net. It's not like a welfare system, not like in the rest of our lives where we have social programs to help people who come on hard times. NFL cuts you. Standings. Out. And so I think when I look at a Saban or a Tiger Woods in his prime or a Belichick or an MJ, not that I want to support mean guys, but this isn't life. It's sports. And in sports, as long as we're keeping score, I'm okay with brutal. I think you'll love the episode. I think you'll absolutely love it. It is amazing that people still buy into conspiracy theories with Michael and his dad. It's just nonsense. Complete, utter nonsense that Michael's gambling and his father's murder had anything in common. It's laughable. It's pathetic. It's hour 2 next.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand.
This, people are telling me this because it's attention seekers and conspiracy theories around Michael Jordan that his father passed away in the summer and then in October he quit. And there's been this, ridiculous theory that Michael Jordan's gambling is the reason that his father was murdered in the summer. And then 3 months later, Michael Jordan basically, not even that, he just retired, like early October. He said, I'm out. Well, first of all, Michael Jordan had begun training for baseball 9 months before that. He had also told his trainer, Tim Grover, acknowledges Michael was already into the baseball training stuff. He had told Tim Grover, who's an accredited, respected trainer. Secondly, there's a journalist in episode 7, and I'll let you watch it, who says Jordan had told him like a year and a half earlier, I'm going to quit pretty soon. I want to play baseball. It's my dad's love, and I want to play baseball. And so Jordan had told a writer, it's just I got to win 3 straight because Magic and Bird didn't. So you have all these legitimate sources, and then David Stern laughed at it. He's like, forcing him to, what? Michael Jordan was the face of the league. What? So one of the reasons I stopped taking calls on this show, people have a position, and if I give you facts and information, they have no interest. So I'd rather bring on accredited journalists or athletes or somebody you can have a grown-up conversation with. The idea that any of these conspiracy theories have lasted, it's been denied by everybody. It doesn't make any sense. You got Michael Jordan training for baseball way in advance of that. Way before the murder of his father. It's like there's just a percentage of people, they don't want to learn, they're incurious, they want to feel important, they have a goofy theory that people just roll their eyes at. Everybody just sort of, the late David Stern just like, no, that's not what happened. I mean, the NBA, frankly, was not as good when Michael left the first time, and it was not as good when Michael left the second time. He was that spectacular. So watch episode 7. It's very emotional. I'm not giving away anything, but it's worth your time. It's really terrific and really sad. And there's just a lot of stuff, and they just jammed a lot. Remember Jason Hare I interviewed a couple weeks ago on my podcast, and I asked him, "What's your favorite episode?" And he said, "Episode 7." So it is packed full. It is absolutely packed full, and I think you'll like it. Brandon Marshall is going to be joining us pretty quickly here. Longtime NFL receiver. NFL schedules come out tonight. Now I am going to release. So I release schedules after. I always say, Joy, I think grading drafts is stupid because who knows after the second draft pick if guys can play. Right. So what I do is I wait for coaching changes after the season, then free agency, and then the draft. And then I say, here's what I think the standings will be. And then we watch the schedules and we watch injuries and we give you, more standings we predict. And so I will today give you all the new coaches, all the free agents, and all the draft picks. Here's my prediction on the standings. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll look at, here's the schedules, and that'll, I won't change it drastically, but I do think schedules can matter, especially new coach, new system, new quarterback. Cincinnati could be very interesting. The New York Giants could be very interesting. Well, he played 13 years in the NFL, and half the time, 6 times he was a Pro Bowler. Has great broadcasting talent and chops as well. Always one of my favorite guys. He has a podcast out there. I Am an Athlete, an athlete's raw, uncensored take on professional sports podcast. And he had Roger Goodell as a guest. It's interesting, Brandon, I've always loved having you on the show. Roger Goodell gets a lot of crap. But all I know is this, Brandon. Since he's taken over the league's more popular. It makes more money. He's had to deal with Colin Kaepernick situations, domestic violence situations. He's had to deal with the coronavirus. And every time I think to myself, boy, he's a good leader. Do you think, now when you interviewed him, did it change your perception of him pre-interview and post-interview?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm with you. I'm with you on that point that he is a good leader. But rightfully so, he should be getting his ass kicked when it comes to, the public perception, because he hasn't done a good job of showing who he is. Like, this is the Roger Goodell that I know, the one who jumped on my podcast and he hasn't shaved. He's in his, his man cave. This is what he should show. What he did for the draft, I think, was genius, and I think, took him to a whole nother level. Embracing the booze, just dressing it down. And I hit him up after the draft and I said, you need to continue this. This is one of the best moves you've ever made, because when you see Roger Goodell, you always see him buttoned up. You don't see him talking about culture. You don't see him doing other things, because he is one of the best leaders I've ever been around. But now when you see him in this light, you see him, where it's relatable. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah. I thought the draft was a home run. I thought it was very family-oriented, very human. I got to see players with their families. I loved it. I thought it was – I'm not saying it's better or worse than the previous stuff, but I love seeing the families. Now,
it was great.
I got to throw this at you because you're an honest guy. So Jay Cutler got divorced, and I feel bad for Jay Cutler. He got divorced.
Yeah.
Christian Cavallari's beautiful and smart and ambitious, and, they'll both find new love, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But Jay Cutler always had a reputation, and I know a buddy of mine's good friends with him, is really, really difficult. What you played with Jay, the Jay was he difficult?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I'm surprised. Me and Jay, our marriages lasted this long. Like we're both difficult. That's why we didn't win a Super Bowl together, because we couldn't just bring it all together. But that's his personal business. I wish them well. I've been around both of them a lot. They're both amazing people. But yes, Jay Cutler is difficult. For me, it's like when you get older, you learn, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to learn to love. It's not just love is different. Love, is ever changing. when you're doing it with someone else. And I think, for everyone out there, especially men, alpha males, guys in our position, you have to humble yourself and just do everything you can to just make that sacrifice daily. And I think that's where I've learned to get better, and I have a lot of work to do. So hopefully we all can learn from this.
Yeah, and I wish Jay the best, too. I was talking more about his career. People have said this about Aaron Rodgers. They've said Aaron's great, but Aaron can be prickly. Aaron can be difficult as a quarterback. When you played with Jay as a player, not the personal stuff, did you find him off-putting at times?
Yeah, I think that's I think we've talked about that a bunch. Jay is Jay.
What's that mean?
To get, right? And that's what makes him loved in the locker room, and that's also what where guys push back in the locker room with Jay is because it's either you love him or you hate him.
Yeah, Brandon Marshall's joining me. He's got a new podcast out. So if you look at recent NFL history, and you should be an expert at this, where you go in the draft helps a lot. If you go to a dysfunctional organization, a Cleveland or a Cincinnati or a Miami, it's much tougher to succeed. So you played with some really well-run organizations. Seahawks, Broncos are well-run organizations. Then you played for the Jets. Now, you did have a great year or two in New York. You had one great year.
Hold on, so you're saying the Jets aren't well-run?
Well, here's a prime example. I think Sam Darnold's great, but I think he's constantly having to overcome the Jets, their O-line, a bad GM who got fired, a new GM. I think Joe Burrow's going to struggle in Cincinnati. I don't like the owner. I think the division's tough. I don't like their roster. They don't win enough. Take me to your career, Brandon. Did you notice big differences, a Seattle to a Jets or a Giants, or a Denver to a Miami?
Yeah. So when I realized it was when I was traded from the Denver Broncos to the Miami Dolphins. Denver Broncos, I was young, I was dumb, I didn't understand, what being a pro was. I didn't understand what I had. I didn't appreciate what I had. When I got to Miami, oh my gosh, when I talk about terrible, we were good in the locker room. I mean, you think about this, the Miami Dolphins. I was sitting in the office with Coach Sperano when Jeff Ireland and the owner was in Michigan or wherever they were in Stanford interviewing Harbaugh. And we're watching ESPN, and I'm seeing this look on Coach's face like, oh, my gosh, is this really happening? How does that happen at that level? So when you look at the Denver Broncos, we didn't win in those 4 years. We didn't win a Super Bowl. But they ended up winning. Why? Because they are well-run. Joe Ellis, the team there, Elway, they did a phenomenal job. The Miami Dolphins, why haven't they turned it around yet? I think Mr. Ross is passionate about success, but I don't think he's a football guy, and I think he has a lot of work to do. He needs to get the right guys in there, which he may have right now, and we will see. The Jets, this is a shocker. The Jets are actually a well-run organization. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had as a player. Now, Woody, the only thing Woody needs to do is he needs to stop listening to the market and the media.
Yeah.
If he does that and lets the football guys work, man, they can turn this thing around. They have a great opportunity, definitely now more than ever, because you got Tom Brady who's out the division. It's wide open. Maybe it's not wide open because the Buffalo Bills are so strong. I'm not sure.
Did you feel the New York Giants were well run?
Ooh, you put me in the spot right now. I did not.
Why?
I did not. I think they're great people. I think they're a great organization, but I don't think they're disruptive enough. I think there's a few organizations out there like the Chicago Bears, the New York Giants, even the Pittsburgh Steelers, who it's all about history. It's about who we were.
Yeah.
Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're great because they win. But they're rich in tradition. You know, they're super successful in what they do. They don't have a lot of turnaround, great leadership. But when you're not winning, the Chicago Bears, the New York Giants, when you're not winning, you have to change things. You have to be able to shift a little bit. They want you to wear the same socks every single time. They don't want to change certain things. They want a certain guy, and I think that puts them in a box. When the game is changing every year, when the culture of the kid is changing every year, when the culture of the coach is changing every year. So I think, yes, they're great. They have great leadership, great people, but they're so rich in tradition, and they want to preserve that so much that it handicaps them from actually competing today. If that makes any sense.
No, Brandon, I think it's brilliant. This is, Brandon, your classic example. They live in a box. And when I'll give you an example. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And so the University of Washington had a proud history. And I always argued they were trapped by it. Oregon had no history. So Phil Knight went in and said, we're going to have 100 uniforms. We're going to be crazy. We're going to blow up the stadium. And Oregon had no history to be beholden to. And I think you're right. I think the Bears and the Giants and the Steelers a lot of times, Brandon, they're trapped. They're absolutely trapped by their history. And I think it's a really good point. Now, I got it.
But then you can go back to where we started, and that was the Cincinnati Bengals. It's the same thing. He's so trapped in his old ways, like. I don't know does he even want to win? Like, I don't know. Like, you have to evolve. You have to change. He's so stuck in how he used to do business in the 90s that it's hurting the team. It's hurting the city.
Yep.
And then you have Joe Burrow. If he doesn't change now, this would be the worst mistake he's ever made. You have a guy that could be your top flight quarterback for the next 10 years. Do everything you can to make it work. We'll see.
As a former great player, when the Cowboys signed Andy Dalton and they still haven't given Dak a contract, and they've given every good young player a contract, as a former player, what is that saying about Dak and the Cowboys? What is the messaging you read?
You know what it says? One, nothing. You know, like, what's going to end up happening, they're going to get the deal done. Dak is going to be the quarterback for the next 10, 12 years. That's a fact. But I think if you just start peeling back those layers a little bit more, what you're going to see is that Dak may be playing really hardball. He may be putting some stuff out there internally. It's like, listen, if I don't get this, I'm not coming in, right? So I think they could be prepping for a clash. So I think that's why they signed Dalton. Now, my question, though, is like, why, if you're Andy, why are you going there? Because I still, like, you're not – so now you're just going to – and I love Andy. I love him. He's a friend. But I'm like, man, you don't want to go to a team where you could potentially be the number one guy? Now, everybody's journey is different. Everybody's strategy is different. But I would have liked to see Andy go somewhere and compete.
Yeah, well, you know, he's from Texas, house in Dallas with this virus. I kind of felt like he signed there for a year. You know, the virus is, people are making decisions. I was talking to a recruiting coordinator in college football yesterday, and he said kids don't want to leave their region this year. They want to stay close to home. If you were, let me ask you this now as a broadcaster. If you were in the league right now, and let's say we continue to have declining numbers in the virus, but there is a second wave at some point in September, October, would you want to play in the locker room as a team leader? Would you play if you knew there was still a chance you could get the virus?
The under 26 Brandon Marshall, yes. The, over 26 Brandon Marshall, hell no. Hell no. I mean, it's not worth it. Like, we talked about this on our podcast, and Reggie Wayne, he spoke eloquently about it. Like, no, it's not worth it. It doesn't matter who you are. This thing can drop you any moment, and I just don't think it's worth it. So obviously there's a lot of gray out there. We don't know what's going to happen, but I just find it difficult if there's another wave that we continue to push forward in sports. You know, because I hate to say this, but, like, you know, there's some news with Earl, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's his personal business, but, like, you know, the only thing I think about is, what are you doing? April 12th, what are you doing? What are we doing? Like I don't even want to go there. I'm gonna stop. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, there's always going to be somebody, right? Like, let's say a couple of months from now, that one guy that's going to be bringing in thoughts, you know, like, and you know what a thought is, Colin?
What?
I don't. It's like you just got to Google it. But it's like, it's not your girl. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that one guy that's going to, you know, do something that could jeopardize the entire team. And I think that's the biggest concern for me is we all come together and say we're going to do this, but then you have to, like, really lock people in their rooms indoors, and I don't think that's possible.
That's fair. Yeah, I don't want to comment on that Earl Thomas thing. Let's
not comment on that.
Yeah, my wife always said.
I love Earl.
Yeah.
I want everybody to know I love Earl. Earl's a great dude. I had an opportunity to play with him in Seattle. He's a great dude.
Yeah. My wife always says, Brandon, don't go where you shouldn't go. Don't do what you shouldn't do. And so I don't. There you go.
Good.
Yeah, it is pretty good. There you go. Brandon Marshall, good talking to you.
Thanks for having me, big dog.
Appreciate it. Brandon Marshall. Yeah, I mean, I got nothing to say on Earl. I wish him the very best going forward. It's a crazy story. There's things are happening in the world I have no idea about. Sometimes I read stories like that story and I'm like, people are doing things. I don't even know what's going on. I just go home, I make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I take naps, I play with my dogs. People doing things with their cousins and brothers, and I mean, I felt guilty. I got a haircut the other day. I felt guilty. I wore a mask. I felt guilty. There's guys doing stuff out there crazy. You young people, man, I'm telling you, I'm naps and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. That's as edgy as I get. I read that story, I was like, wow, that's a life.
That's not in your wheelhouse.
That's not really in my wheelhouse. There's never been a story that came out that was more out of my wheelhouse than that story. And let's just move on.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
iHeartRadio and Tribeca Studios present Fierce, a podcast about the incredible women who never made it into our history books and the modern women carrying on their legacies today. I'm your host, Joe Piazza. Each week, we'll be introducing you to women like Chengi Sao.
She outclasses every other known pirate by every metric.
And her modern counterpart, Tracy Edwards.
I wanted to be navigator on my own boat, and I thought the only way I could do that is to actually create my own project.
Listen and subscribe to Fierce on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
With everything going on, you're probably worrying more than ever. Check out M-Drive Relax. Built to relieve stress. 50% off, too. They're offering M-Drive Relax at 50% off. Check it out, mdriverelax.com. I'm going to get about top of the hour. I got it pushed back because Brandon Marshall was so good. I'm going to give you my post-coaching moves, post-free agency, post-draft, NFL predictions, and then the schedule comes out tonight, which I can change my mind. I won't change it drastically, but I will. I guarantee you there'll be a couple of teams that I change my mind on, a couple of games. That's just the way it works. Here's Joy with the news.
No.
Turn on the news.
This is the Herd Line News.
Well, Cam Newton needs a new team, and the Patriots have an unproven starting quarterback. But it's not looking like Cam Newton will be heading up to New England anytime soon, according to Joseph Person of The Athletic. Offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels wasn't necessarily high on Cam when he had discussions with the Panthers about their head coaching vacancy.
Yeah.
Now, a few days ago, there was a report that Cam Newton was not willing to accept a backup role. Ian Rappaport just reported that Cam wants to be a starter, but with no starting job available, he has not ruled out taking a backup job in the right situation.
Oh.
That's actually significant news to me. I think I've been saying I think that the best situation for Cam Newton and for Pittsburgh is for Cam Newton to go to the Steelers. There's not going to be some big wave for Cam Newton to all of a sudden become the starter just because he goes there, and their backup situation is a disaster.
Yeah.
And talked about what Glazer said yesterday. Ben's never really been a workout warrior, and he's coming off a significant injury. We don't know what Ben is going to be, and if he does happen to get injured again, do you really want to be in that same situation that you were in last year? Because they're always competitive. They were in the playoff conversation last year with Duck Hodges and Mason Rudolph. I think Pittsburgh is a great situation for Cam Newton, but I also like that he is willing to take a backup role, not because I think he is a backup quarterback. I think he's a starter, and he has a lot of great football left in him. But two things can be true. You can be a starter and the market can be saturated, which is the situation. There's a lot of teams, everyone has their starting quarterback, and if you don't have your starting quarterback necessarily like the Patriots or the Jags, you're kind of in a conversation of what's your long-term plan anyway, so it might not be beneficial for them to bring in Cam Newton. And backup situations can work out very well for you. We saw what happened with Teddy Bridgewater and Ryan Tannehill.
Especially no camps, offensive lines are rusty, quarterbacks get hit more.
It's a temporary situation. Don't look at it as the future of your career. It's a temporary situation that's going to set you up for years to come. We've seen just last year that be a successful strategy for two quarterbacks. So the Bengals have high hopes that Joe Burrow will be the guy to turn the franchise around, and even though they took calls on offers for the first overall pick, they were always committed to keeping it to draft their quarterback. Bengals Director of College Scouting, Mike Potts, said we weren't moving off of that pick. I could have told you that a long time ago. And Duke Tobin, their Director of Player Personnel, said we felt great about him and the fit for us and for him being here. It was, in our opinion, a good year to have the pick if you were to have it. To have a player like Joe is valuable to us. We feel great about it. Now we have to guide the new players through the offseason. Dolphins General Manager Chris Greer did confirm that they spoke to the Bengals about the top choice, but it just appears that the Bengals never got an offer that moved them enough to consider moving off of the top pick, which means that really, to me, the Dolphins were not willing to give up all of those picks or players to get Joe Burrow when they had Tua that they felt strongly about at 5. And they didn't end up moving off of a 5 to get Tua, which is the best case scenario for the Dolphins if that's who they really wanted all along.
Yeah.
I mean, the conversation would have been totally different, obviously, if Tua hadn't been injured, whether he was the number 1 overall pick.
If Burrow wasn't from Ohio, maybe it's different. But Ohio, it's like LeBron. Ohio kid, bad organization. He's available. People like him. Cincinnati was trapped is the wrong word because Burrow's talented, but sometimes you're just best taking the local kid. If you think it's a draw on talent, like Cleveland Cavaliers. If you thought Melo and LeBron were tied, just take the local kid. You know, so if the local kid flourishes somewhere else, you'll never live that down. If the local kid fails, you can always say, well, Burrow. Everybody said he was number 1, so...
Yeah, no one's going to judge Cincinnati if Burrow...
Right.
Well, I'll judge Cincinnati if it's Cincinnati's fault. But if Burrow, they put the pieces around him and he's not successful, no one's going to say you shouldn't have taken Joe Burrow, you should have taken Tua. But you're right. Even if Tua had not gotten injured, if Cincinnati still had the top pick, I don't necessarily know that they would have gone with Tua. I still think they would have gone with Burrow because of the Ohio tie and obviously the way that the season finished. So Jimmy Garoppolo took a lot of heat after the 49ers lost the Super Bowl this year, and his teammate, Richard Sherman, went on KNBR in San Francisco and defended his quarterback.
It's just barbershop talk. It's just something to have a topic. I think it's foolish. When you hear them blaming Jimmy, Jimmy doesn't play defense. We had a 10-point lead. We get the guy stopped in the game. I think, along with other leaders on the team, we would defend him vigorously because that had nothing to do with him.
I always thought it was brutal that we crushed Garoppolo because he missed one deep throw. It's like timeout. Mahomes had bad interceptions in the playoffs, didn't he? I thought the criticism of Garoppolo was so. He
wasn't great. He went 3 of 11 for 36 yards and an interception.
He didn't have a great fourth quarter, but good God, it's his first starting year and he gives you a lead against Patrick Mahomes entering the 4th in the Super Bowl.
No, I think it's incredibly unfair, and it's very panicky to think that he's not the quarterback of the future.
God, it's so.
But somebody's got to lose, and the team that loses, we're very critical of. That's how it goes. When you get to the big game, there's big consequences to losing. I think it's kind of absurd, the idea that it was even a conversation about possibly moving off of him for Tom Brady. I mean, all we talked about all season long was how great the 49ers were, and they were for sure going to the Super Bowl, and they were by far the best team in the league, and they had an incredible season, and so did Jimmy G. I mean, they were in the Super Bowl, like you said, with a 10-point lead. So somebody's got to lose. That doesn't mean that it's, that you have to restructure everything. It comes down to one play sometimes. You make it or you don't. I don't think he's not the guy. I didn't love his decision-making, and he obviously did not have a great fourth quarter, but Just give it a little more time. Let it simmer. Let the sauce simmer a little bit more.
Yep. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
I'll give you my AFC and my NFC predictions top of next hour. Steve Smith at the NFL Network. Ravens, Panthers, unbelievable career. Rival of Michael Irvin. He'll be joining us around the corner. Always interesting. Listen, Michael Lewis, who wrote my favorite sports book, Moneyball, The Big Short, The Blind Side. Michael Lewis, fascinating guy, great American writer. He'll be joining us last hour, too. I love guests like that. He's so smart.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Get your free credit scorecard today, even if you're not a Discover customer. Include your FICA credit score. Discover.com/credit scorecard. Limitations apply. Steve Smith, 16 NFL seasons, a 5-time Pro Bowler. He'll be part of the NFL schedule release on the NFL Network tonight. I'm into the schedule release. I think schedules matter. I do, but, Steve, let me ask you. Do schedules matter? Did you wait for it? Did you care? What did you look for? What do they mean?
Well, good afternoon here on the East Coast. And, yes, the schedules do matter. The way the league is doing it, they're doing it tonight at 8 o'clock on Info Network. Hosted by Rich, Eisen, Colleen Wolf, Kurt Warner, Steve Mariucci, Steve Weiss, Deion Sanders, and a lot of other guests as well. And what I love about looking at the schedule is it gives you a peek into what your season can look like, right? When we saw the season, when we see the schedule, teams break it up each game into quarters, and there are games in those quarters that you ain't got a chance, right, just based on that team. And then there's times where you go, okay, we can squeak this one out. And then let's just say a team like Buffalo, right? Let's just say you playing Buffalo on a Sunday night primetime game, and you're in Buffalo, and it's late in the season. That defense is a slobber knocker. They cause turnovers. They hit you in the mouth. They get a lot of pressure, right? They're constantly in your face. Well, all of a sudden, you're playing them in December, and it's cold, physical team. No one's 100% in December.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, man, and you're away. So now you've been sitting at home all day in the cold, sitting in Buffalo in the cold versus at home where you can maybe get away from football for a little bit. Say you play a Monday night game. After meetings, I go to my schools, my kids' lunch just to get away and let my mind not get revved up too soon before the 7.5 hours before the football game starts. So all of that stuff plays a part.
Yeah. No, I think it does. I think this with no OTAs this year, I think certain teams like a Cincinnati with a rookie quarterback, if you don't get much of a fall camp, I don't think that helps you any. I think veteran players this year, because of no OTAs, I think I think like Russell Wilson, it's going to help him.
Yes.
I just do. By the way, you're in Carolina. I've always been a huge fan of Teddy Bridgewater. I was never a huge fan of Cam. He wears me out. But I think he's talented. Are you shocked they didn't keep Cam?
Well, I'm not supposed to have relationships with people, but a lot of people talk to me, so I have a lot of information.
Yeah.
And with all that being said is, the lie would be, yes, I'm shocked. The truth is, no, I'm not. And the reason I say that is because I talk to a lot of people, but I also understand what his team is. And here's what I mean. Matt Rule had a 7-year deal. Remove the money part.
Yeah.
7 years says we're in this for the long haul. We understand it. Mr. Tepper is a hedge fund manager who understands long, passive income over time, understands that your money must work for you even when it's sleeping. So in the morning, it may be blood on the streets, but later, a couple of days later, it may get cleaned up. So understanding the long process of a passive income is income generating over a long period of time. So you have to be patient. Real estate, passive income, stocks, you can't get in the stock market trying to get it fast cash. And so you got a new coach who wants to implement some of the stuff he wants, And if you don't believe me, how does a guy have 7 picks and he picks all defensive players?
Yeah.
He's filling the void of areas he believes needs to be filled up. Defense, young, cheap.
Yep.
He utilized offense through free agency, meaning I called it patchwork. Not that anything wrong with Teddy Bridgewater, just more of saying Teddy Bridgewater is not going to be the quarterback there for the next 9 years. He's not a spring chicken. He has a little bit of miles on his speedometer and some injuries, right? And so then you have an offensive line who really is trying to get fixed. They've traded, put some guys in. So there's a long process in which they're starting this process now. They're warning the fans, even though you may not read the writing on the wall. I don't want to say rebuilding, they're rehabbing, right?
Yeah.
They're rehabbing. They're not removing the cabinetry completely. They're sanding it down, stripping away all the bad parts that they deem are bad. I'm not saying Cam is bad. They deem that they can do without, and repainting it. And that's how rehabbing, construction kind of goes. It's a process. In phases.
Yeah. Steve Smith joining us. Alex Smith, 17 surgeries on his leg. I almost wish it's just too much. I'm going to be nervous watching him. You actually broke your leg, I think, in 2004. You came back, had a huge year in 2005. Was there a moment that you thought, this is brutal? I broke
Several.
And that did you ever think about retirement?
I never thought about retirement. I wanted to know how much longer. So I did it in September. I was not completely able to walk without either a boot, crutches, or air cast until late December.
Wow.
And then the pool work I was doing was in January, February. I wasn't really feeling good until training camp. So that's September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So you're talking about 10 months. Think about it, 10 months. Do you know how many times I questioned myself at 10 months? Do you know how many times I said, I don't know how this is going to work out? How much doubt I had, how much negative talk, how many tears I had? You know, it's like anything else. Just like we're talking about, the Carolina Panthers. It's a process.
Did you ever worry about getting hit once you did play?
Yes. So at the time I was with Reebok, and so I had my shoes constructed. The guys used to make fun of me. I wore high tops. I wore literally like the old school Converse high tops. It was Reebok, but I wore shoes that went up to the top of my surgically repaired because I broke my tibia or fibia, and I tore the ligaments in the inside and outside of my ankle. So they had to repair the ligaments as well on top of the break.
Oh, Lord.
So that's what you call a hot mess, right? I had a lot going on.
Steve. Wow, you just had a great career, man. You know what? And you're a tough guy. So if you had questions, I mean, I look at that Alex Smith stuff and I think to myself, dude's made 100.
I had to turn it off.
I can't watch it, Steve. I can't watch athletes. I've told Joy this. I can't watch pro athletes get hurt. I can't. I can't. I can't watch the Theismann. I can't watch Alex Smith. So you couldn't watch it because you've been through it and you know how brutal it is.
Man, you know who I couldn't watch? I couldn't watch Gordon, the guy from the,
God, Gordon Hayward.
Oh, Gordon Hayward, when they showed that, I almost puked. I'm like, why do we need to rewatch watching a man fracture and tear his stuff out of the socket?
Oh, God.
It was bad, but some folks like it. That's why we got doctors. I can never be a doctor. I got a Belgian Malinois right now, and it's a female, and she's in heat. And let me tell you, brother, I am squeamish dealing with her right now.
So you don't like blood? Yeah.
Wait.
You don't like blood.
Sure.
I don't like blood either. I cut my finger in 9th grade. I still have a scar on my hand. I passed out. I can't take blood.
Now, I hate to say it, I love you, bro, but I'm not soft like that.
I'm pretty soft, Steve. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just a talking head. All right, Steve Smith, NFL Network tonight. Love your stories. Good talking to you.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. I ran into him one night in Manhattan Beach. I was at a restaurant with my wife. Steve Smith walked in. He just got off a flight from, I think, South Korea. We sat there and chopped it up, and he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy. Mother's Day is Sunday, but given the current situation, many mothers and grandmothers will not be able to see their loved ones to celebrate together. But Lowe's is doing something very special, donating $1 million worth of flowers to moms and grandmas in more than 500 senior housing facilities around the country. Lowe's is partnering up with Uber to deliver those baskets in a contactless way to keep everybody safe. Lowe's targeting coronavirus hot zones, New York, Chicago, Boston, Houston, Miami, Seattle. Join us in the herd in thanking Lowe's for giving back to their community again and making for a special Mother's Day. So I have Michael Lewis, author of Moneyball, The Blind Side, The Big Short. Big Short was a good movie. I've watched that a couple times. I've watched Moneyball. I mean, you know what's funny? You don't think I'm a hockey fan, but Miracle, and people don't think I like baseball and hockey, but my favorite two movies of all time, sports movies, are Moneyball and Miracle. I don't like football movies. I don't like basketball movies. Baseball makes way better movies, and I can watch that scene with Herb Brooks, Kurt Russell in the locker room giving the speech to the team. I've watched it 1,000 times. I get emotional every time. I'm going to watch it during the break.
Those are your two favorite sports movies?
Easily. Not even close. Field of Dreams was interesting because I like Kevin Costner.
You don't like Remember the Titans?
Not really. Tennessee Titans bore me. Remember the Titans bores me. It's something about him. I do like Kevin Costner. My wife bumped into him last summer. So she said he was very nice. So we like Kevin Costner. Field of Dreams was very good. I'll give you that one. Hour 3 next.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand.
In the playoffs, but baseball makes for good books. Maybe it's because the season's long and there's a lot of inside stories. I mean, I have no idea why, but God, is Moneyball good. Go YouTube. We're all looking for stuff to watch. Go watch after the NFL schedule release tonight. This weekend, watch Moneyball with Michael Lewis. Brad Pitt's obviously in that thing. It's so good. And you know what I love about it? It basically, they're looking for solutions. They have no budget. The Oakland A's have no budget. They have no money. And so they're like, all right, how do we win? And we're going to turn the sport on its ear. And now the sport's totally driven by analytics. But when you're the first people to do things, it changes. You know, you get a lot of blowback. And so Billy Beane and the A's had no money and a lot of blowback. And they changed. I mean, they were some of the first adapters. Now, people say, well, they didn't win a World Series. You can't. They had no money. They were getting to the playoffs. It's like they just didn't have any money. The A's still don't have any money. But Michael Lewis in 15 minutes. That's Joy Taylor, Steve Smith, Brandon Marshall. Boy, they were honest today.
They were.
Yeah. I was going to ask Steve Smith about Earl Thomas. I thought I'd stay out of that space.
You probably should.
Yeah, I probably should. I am now going to predict. Let me make sure I got this right so I don't screw it up. I think I threw something away, guys. I can't find it. Oh, there we go. There we go. So season ends, and a bunch of coaches get fired and hired, like Washington, right? And then you have your free agent, period, and then you have your draft. And then you also have your schedule release, and then you have camp, and some guys get hurt. And so I could sit and never, make no prediction until right before the season. But I do believe once I get the coaches in, once I get the free agency in, and once I get the draft in, you can kind of predict what's going to happen. I think the variations off the standings will be small. I do think somebody tonight, so I'm going to give you my AFC and my NFC standing predictions pre-schedule release. And my gut feeling is I'll make some moves. Not drastic, but some. So you want to go AFC first? All right. So AFC East, Bills, Jets tie at 9-7, but Bills beat the Jets twice and win the division. Dolphins third at 7-9, Patriots 7-9. Patriots have no weapons. Quarterback never taken a meaningful snap, no weapons. They lost their two best linebackers, their kicker. They haven't replaced them. Rookie tight ends. Tight ends tend to take a while in the NFL. So Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots. AFC North, Ravens win 10-6, Browns second 9-7. I've moved the Steelers down to 7-9, Bengals 5-11. I guess the story here would be I have Cleveland over Pittsburgh. I think they have better components. I don't trust Big Ben's offseason workout regimen, as Jay Glazer pointed out yesterday. And I'll probably look at the schedule tonight. The Steelers are one of those teams I could move up to 8-8, 9-7 based on the schedule. And Bengals, they're 5-11. AFC South, I think the Colts reclaim it with Phillip Rivers. I think for a year he works. Titans pull back. I think the Ryan Tannehill stuff all worked perfectly. It won't this year. Titans, there's too noisy, too many missteps in the front office. Pull back at 7-9. Jags a couple of wins, but they're tanking, 2-14. AFC West, I think, is very competitive. Chiefs to win, Broncos second, Chargers and Raiders. I love the Chargers roster. But this is a quarterback coach league. And Anthony Lynn and Tyrod Taylor in a division that's got Mahomes and Andy Reid, I think they're outgunned. And I got to tell you something. I thought Vic Fangio did a really good job in the second half of the season last year. I thought Denver really came alive, and I love Denver's offseason. Chargers rounded out 5-11. I'll watch their schedule and see. I think the division's too tough for them. I don't think they're good enough defensively to compete. The Raiders 5-11. So my AFC playoff picture, Bills win the East, Ravens win the North, Colts win the South, Chiefs win the West, and then the wild card teams are Denver, Cleveland, and the Jets. In the NFC, Eagles win the division, 2 games over the Dallas Cowboys at 8-8. Giants 6-10, Redskins 5-11. Redskins defense is interesting, but I don't have any idea what they're going to look like at quarterback. New coach, new coordinators, new staff, no OTAs, virus year. I don't know. NFC North, I think Minnesota had a better roster overall than Green Bay last year, and I think they had a much, much more influential draft. I think Minnesota had one of the better drafts than the Packers did. Bears 8-8. Quarterback situation, who knows? I don't buy Matt Patricia 5-11. NFC South, I think the Saints getting Malcolm Jenkins and Emmanuel Sanders was really smart. Veteran smart players who come in fit very easily. I think Tom Brady gets Tampa after a rocky September to 9-7. I do not think Carolina's in a rebuilding mode. I think Carolina's going to score a bunch of points with Teddy Bridgewater, who's a very good distributor. And I think they drafted all defense. I don't think they're in a total rebuild mode. I think Carolina's going to be okay. Atlanta, I don't know how I feel. I'll watch the schedule. They feel 500 to me. I have them at 7-9. NFC West, Seattle 12-4 is pretty ambitious, but I think Seattle and 49ers are the class of the division. I think Seattle last year was on fire. They beat San Francisco, then they fell apart in the backfield, or they think they would have ended up in the NFC Championship, and quite frankly, I think they could have ended up in the Super Bowl. I undervalued them last year. I'm not doing it again. Rams 8-8, don't have any depth and a bunch of new coaches. Cardinals 6-10. There'll be a fun 6-10. We'll see how Isaiah Simmons works. I love watching Kyler Murray. So in the NFC, I have the Eagles winning the East, the Vikings the North, the Saints the South, the Seahawks winning the West, and my wild card teams, 49ers are going to be a heck of a wild card team, Tampa Bay and Green Bay. And there you go. And I have the right to change my mind. Right to change my mind. I did see this. Speaking of baseball, baseball came out with a proposal to start the season July 1st. The headline says best case scenario, which that's the best case scenario? Like you could start it August 1st? It's incredibly confusing because according to this, baseball wants to play teams in their home stadiums, not like Florida and Arizona. So the best case scenario is July. So let's say you go to August 1st. You're going to be playing baseball outdoors in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and St. Louis in November and December and January. Now, I've said this for years. Baseball's confusing to me. There's the unwritten rules part, and nobody agrees on them. The American League has the DH. The National League doesn't. I cannot believe that the NBA Eastern Conference and Western Conference would play by separate rules. If you stare at a home run long enough, they throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball at your chin. There's a way to play the game, even though nobody's quite sure exactly what that way to play the game is. And I think 162 games in 2020 is ridiculous. They did get rid of the September call-ups, which I always thought was the strangest thing in the world, that you could win Rookie of the Year and it wouldn't actually be your rookie year. They finally just came to terms and said that's ridiculous. I think this story, what's fascinating about baseball is it's not a sport, because of strong union representation, it is not a sport that historically has been great with change. And they're going to have to make sudden and swift moves, and I don't think it plays into baseball's strength. I'm very confused by this. So they want to play in all these cities, but they're starting in 8 weeks. The best case scenario is July 1st. I don't know how many games you can play. I mean, you want to be done, right? July, September. You want to get playoffs by October. It gets cold in America. It starts raining. I don't understand that. I don't know how you play baseball in all the cities and start July 1st, and you'd have to play like 60 games, 75 games. So it's confusing. I'm fascinated to watch how baseball transitions through this. Football has always been so good at evolving and adapting quickly, and I don't know why that is. But the sensibility, the DNA of the NFL has always been change. I said a couple years ago they changed the rule during the Super Bowl. Just what they do. It's just what they do. Baseball does not. It's got its history and its lore and its strong unions. So the latest proposal confuses me. They want to play in all the cities. Do you want to play in New York? I don't know. We'll wait and see. I work for Fox. We have baseball. I hope we get it. Michael Lewis, a noted author, Moneyball, Blindside, Big Short. Great book, great movie. Coming up next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
This Mother's Day, 1-800-Flowers.com. Limited delivery windows, gifts, bouquets, arrangements. Order today, 1-800-Flowers.com. Enter the code HERD. Michael Lewis is somebody I get maybe once, twice a year. A noted author, podcast host, many New York Times best-selling books. Many of his books have been adapted to movie form. Blindside, Moneyball, The Big Short, all nominated for Academy Awards. I just said about 15 minutes ago, Moneyball may be my favorite sports movie ever, and it is my favorite sports book. And I know some of you think I don't love baseball, but I grew up as a minor league baseball announcer. That was my first sort of introduction to broadcasting, but it just so happens in my space, on my platforms, the NFL's king. And Michael Lewis has a new podcast. Before I get to that, I want to introduce him. Michael, I was saying during the break that for some reason NFL works on TV, but baseball works in books and in movies. Not to put you on the spot, but why is that? Because I'm drawn to baseball books, but football on TV.
You'd rather read about baseball
Yes.
and watch football.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, it's really true that that trying to write a football book, the opposite is true too. That you don't want to write a football book because you can throw it inside of a stadium of people watching a football game and they'll have no interest. So why is that? I think there are a couple reasons. One is the pace of the game lends itself to literature, that it's slow.
Yeah.
But then the second thing is the connection to history. It's
Yes.
just sort of like baseball. Baseball is selling not just the game, but the history of the game. Whereas football, it's there. Basketball, it's there, but that's not really what's being sold. What's being sold is the excitement of the game.
Yeah.
So I think those two things, but it's totally true.
Yeah.
That like you write a baseball book and you have a built-in audience of like 50,000 people who will read every baseball book.
Well, Michael, you never turn on a sports radio host. Nobody brings up Red Grange. Nobody.
Or Jim Thorpe.
Never. Not in my. But if you talk baseball, Mickey Mantle is fascinating.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and it's so and I think so. Maybe the other thing is you can sort of imagine the baseball players from the 1930s competing on the field with the baseball players today. You can't really imagine the football players from the 1950s actually being competitive on the field today.
Oh, no, Bob Gibson and Sandy Koufax would get people out today.
Yes.
No question.
Yeah. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure how Bob Lilly would do. Maybe he'd be fine. But I mean, maybe he would be fine, and I just don't know. But I think you just don't see. You don't. The game just. The other games have been allowed to change, and in a much more dramatic way.
You know what's interesting? When you wrote Moneyball, it probably did not help the A's because you gave away the secret sauce. And when I read the book and watch the movie, I think, ooh, you gave away your secrets. Was Billy Beane concerned about that?
You know what he said when I said to him after I was done, because I didn't bring it up until I was done, I said, I thought you were going to be upset for that reason. And he looked at me and he said, you don't think anyone in baseball is really going to read your book. He said, we've been doing this for like 8 years, and it's all as plain as day, and nobody cares. So nobody reads books in baseball. None of the people who work in baseball, he said. So, and he was kind of right about that. It wasn't like existing management that read the book and went, oh, they're right, now I'm wrong. That's not how it worked. But owners got very irritated when they saw that there was a better way to spend their money, and so it did. But to the point of whether it actually kind of screwed up the A's, it was happening. It was going to happen anyway. The Red Sox were already onto it, and if anything, it just sort of made it move a little faster. I don't think the A's were going to keep their secrets for much longer. I've said that I'm not sure sabermetrics over time are helping baseball as a television product. For instance, I miss the cat and mouse of stolen bases. I don't like defensive shifts. As a TV product, I want to see Bryce Harper, handsome kid, big head of hair, on second base, camera shots back and forth. The game now is strikeouts and home runs. And I wonder sometimes, Michael, if the analytics have not been good for the television product of baseball. So I think you're absolutely right about that, and I think that's just an accident because I don't think it's true to say that like analytics generally make sports less watchable. Because look at basketball. What have analytics done there? It's created this much more of a run and gun kind of situation.
More skill, yeah.
Much more fun to watch. I think basketball is getting more fun to watch.
Yes, I agree.
And that's driven by analytics too. So it's not that the analytics are inherently boring, but it's true that the analytics in baseball lead to an even more ponderous game. Right? It's sort of like the secrets that are revealed by data in baseball is everybody should move even less than they are.
Michael, Tom Verducci and I have talked about this. I don't like defensive shifts, Michael, because my takeaway is this. You can't sit in the crease in hockey. You can't stand in the lane in basketball. And the NFL doesn't let you to move all over the place. There's certain offensively, there's some choreography.
Yeah.
But in baseball, they just go sit where you want and stand. And it's like, no. I don't believe my second baseman should be able to be a right fielder.
Well, you see, you're very wedded to the past here, right?
I am.
Because you like the idea. But in addition, it really is true that sort of like the way it's drifting is try to minimize the amount of human motion. And what's exciting is motion, like the stolen, as you say, the stolen base is gone. I don't have a really strong view about whether you should come down on the rules committee and say we're going to force you to play stupid. Even though you know it would be smarter to do that, we're going to force you to do this. I think you'd have trouble. I don't know. You give it a whirl.
Well, it's interesting during this virus. I am fascinated by baseball, which has been a thinking man's game, but there is a certain rigidity to the unions in the process.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking a league. The NFL and the NBA have come out with, the NBA at one point changed its ball and didn't tell the players. These sports are evolvers. Basketball audience tends to be young, techie, social media. NFL has always had an underdog mentality. Even today, they feel like they're playing catch-up, so they're very good. It's all about business. Change, adapt the rules. Baseball's about its history, its unions, its lore. How do you think during this virus, the rigidity of the sport being forced to make drastic changes to get this season in, do you think they will?
Yes. And I think because for some time now they have a sense they're falling behind the other leagues. And I think that the leadership, especially in basketball, has been. I get the sense that Adam Silver is driving things, in a funny way. That the other people running the leagues are looking at him and saying he's kind of the model. And I think that what it does with this moment is it gives the baseball leadership an excuse to do things differently. With that, there's always this fear of like outraging the fans.
The true.
And now
fan,
now you can really do almost anything, and people will say it's okay because of the moment. And the other thing is, when you flip on a baseball game, when they eventually happen, compared to how most of us are living our lives, it will seem unbelievably kinetic. It would be like, oh my God, how exciting!
Yeah. I was thinking of this. Billy Beane was friends with the Arsenal coach, wasn't he? The English Premier League team, the Arsenal coach?
I don't know, but it would make sense because he's all over soccer.
And I know, again, I could be throwing you out with no life preserver here. Does soccer have an analytical kind of growth model? Are they dealing – because I'm seeing it in the NFL. I'm seeing it, in the NFL and football in general. Put your best athlete at quarterback. In basketball, mid-range jumper out. Baseball, home run strikeouts. Have you ever heard, is there a new soccer analytic or sabermetric driving the sport?
No, all I know is that there are people who are doing the analysis. I don't know.
Okay.
I just don't know. I don't know who's taking it and using it. But look who's buying soccer teams, right? Billy Beane's part owner of 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
So presumably, yes.
Yeah. Michael Lewis joining us. He has a podcast, Against the Rules with Michael Lewis. Now, season 1 was about referees in American life.
Yep, we talked about it.
Yes. Now, season 2 is about the rise of coaches. So, in one episode, you talk about the bloodless coach. Now, I'm told here it has something to do with Moneyball. Explain to the audience what a bloodless coach is, because that's season 2 of your podcast.
Well, so most of the season is not about the bloodless coach, but there is an episode about the rise of science and the use of data in coaching, which you see, and it's not just in sports, and the season's not just about sports. But there was a wonderful book called The MVP Machine, which came out last year, which is kind of showing the way baseball coaching has very recently just changed pretty dramatically, and it's gone from being a bunch of guys who played the game who kind of talked to you and made you feel good to people actually analyzing data about the speed of your arm and the trajectory of your swing and the kind of deconstructing baseball players and building them back in a way, using data. And the kind of person who's doing this is not someone necessarily who even played the game. It's sort of like the geekification of coaching. And the effects have been pretty remarkable. We talked to pitchers who walk into a lab and come out with 6 or 7 miles an hour on their fastball. So the question I was asking is like, because it was Moneyball. The question wasn't just baseball, right? It was like, this is happening in baseball. Where else might it happen? That we actually we go from sports and go into like sales pitches. Like if you're a salesman now at a big company, there's some chance your call is being analyzed in all kinds of ways, and you're getting data about what was effective and what was not, and then you build that back into the next sales pitch. So it's sort of like it is the extension of the Moneyball mentality into coaching, which it took a long time to happen. I mean, that was the one part of baseball. When I finished Moneyball, it was really true, as the authors of the MVP machine point out, that the front office had applied these methods to the selection of players, but they hadn't applied it to the development of players, and that's what's happening now.
But can all players be coached?
Well, all players, it's a great question whether people will respond to it or not. But when you show kind of dramatic results, athletes tend to grab it, right? So I think that this kind of coaching, unlike the kind of coaching where you're just kind of take my word for it, is much more likely to be adopted. And so I think generally yes.
Yeah. Michael Lewis is joining us, author and noted podcast host, multiple New York Times selling books. You can dive deep, or you have macro views of the world, and that's one of the reasons I think people appreciate you. And I find fascinating in this pandemic. First of all, big states with lots of space appear to be less punitively hit. Dense housing, multi-generational living globally can be tougher. How do you pivot? Big macro, this is a thinking man's question to you. How do you pivot from death to the economy and do it with sensitivity? Because we've got 32 million people have filed for unemployment. Those numbers are, even compared to post 9/11, unbelievably daunting. How do you do it delicately? Do you have to understand there's backlash? How do you lead discussions as a commissioner, a CEO, going from death to rebooting or restarting the economy?
Well, our country has made one huge mistake, and it's sort of the unwillingness of federal leadership to centralize the problem has meant that testing, the way you pivot in a smart way is you find out where the virus is and you isolate it in a much more nuanced way than we're doing it now, and you let a lot of people go back to work because they can. And the problem is we have 30,000 new cases of this thing every day, and people don't know who has it or who's about to get it. And so when you open up the economy, as we're doing now, or slowly, which you're essentially doing it with the same lack of information that you had when you locked it down. And it's really a shame that we wasted these couple of months not dramatically testing the population. That's how you do it. That's the easy answer. The best solution was you find out where the virus is and how it moves, and then you don't have to ask so many hard questions. You let a lot of people out of their houses. What you do now, I don't have an answer. I mean, I tell you what's going to happen is that people are bored with being at home and they need their jobs. And so everybody's going to kind of start going back to work, and there's going to be carnage. So there's no delicate way to do it. I mean, I think we're going to yo-yo now between like fear of the disease and economic need.
Yeah, the guilt of not working, and what that creates, by the way, massive unemployment increases poverty, generational poverty. Now, it's funny. I saw a story today where people confirmed that masks help, and I thought, we're just figuring that out.
I know. Well, this is the thing, right? We have not used the tool of science as well as we could have used the tool of science. Now that's changing, I think. Actually, I think what's happening is that the society is starting to compensate for the absence of leadership and just kind of taking matters into its own hands. I've been working on a wonderful story that I've been playing out in pieces in Bloomberg News about the Chan Zuckerberg Biohub, which is in San Francisco, where they just turned a researcher named Joe DeRisi just turned the lab into a coronavirus testing lab inside of 3 weeks, and he's all of a sudden got, he can process 3,000 tests a day, and he can shine this flashlight anywhere he wants. Like, where is this thing? Where is the virus, and how do we isolate it? And that kind of thing we're going to see a lot more of, I think. So I think we're going to bounce, but it's such a shame that it wasn't. We're like a poorly coached team right now. That's what it feels like. We're like a losing team, and we're losing not because we don't have talent. It's because we're poorly coached.
Yeah. All right, Michael Lewis is his name, author, podcast host. The podcast is Against the Rules with Michael Lewis. We don't get you enough. You're a very busy person. I would love. When does your article come out that we could read?
Well, the first piece of it, it's a series in Bloomberg News. Appeared like 10 days ago,
Okay.
and the next one will be tomorrow, and then there'll be another one a week from now. They're a learning machine, and I'm learning with them.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael.
All right, Colin.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good stuff. Let me read this real quick here before I go. Joy. Mother's Day, 1-800-FLOWERS, limited delivery, 1-800-FLOWERS.com. Enter the code HERD, H-E-R-D, bouquets, arrangements, and Mother's Day gifts. Here's Joy Taylor with the news.
No.
Turn on the news.
This is the Herd Line News.
So Nick Saban coached first-round picks Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy at Alabama.
Yes, he
and
did.
he said on NFL Network that both receivers are great. It just depends on what skill you're looking for.
I think receivers are a little bit like a basketball team. You know, you got a point guard, you got a two guard, you got a swing forward, you got a power forward. They're all different, but they're all very critical to being successful as a team. So if your personal preference was to have a speed receiver, then Henry Ruggs is probably as good as it gets. If you wanted somebody who a little more finesse type player, great slot receiver, good option route runner, then you probably would favor Jerry Jeudy. In their own style of play, both guys are exceptional. So it really was just a matter of personal choice.
And I think they both ended up where they should have. Henry Ruggs ran a 4.27 40-yard dash at the Combine, and he ended up with the Raiders at the 12th overall pick.
They
Derek
love
Carr
speed,
said he thought that Ruggs was his number one wide receiver in the draft. Honestly, the concept of running a 4.27
come on.
40.
It's a cheetah. It just doesn't make sense. Did you see? I mean, when you see a 40 run that fast, it's remarkable. Like
It's
you
absurd.
have to have such unbelievable technique beyond the dynamic, the ability to explode. But it's just, it's like Olympic sprinting. That's an Olympic sprinter time.
Yeah.
So much of Usain Bolt is this perfect form and this perfect start.
Yeah, every movement makes you slower or faster. How
Right.
you hold your arms, how you hold your hands.
Yeah.
Yes, he's an incredibly fast player. And Jerry Jeudy obviously went 15th to the Broncos. Speaking of the Broncos brought in Pat Shurmur as the new offensive coordinator this year, but Drew Lock doesn't think that the virtual offseason is slowing down his learning process. He already credits having 1 year in the league with helping him pick up the new offense quickly. He said there's similar carryover from the last one to where you can pocket that. You don't necessarily have to study as much because you've already got that mindset down. But even the newer stuff I'm getting taught, it's easier for me to learn because I've found the way that fits me best as far as learning a new offense goes. Picking this one up has happened, I'd say, 10 times as quick as I did the first time.
Nice.
And that would make sense because he already has experience in the league. I think it's going to be harder for rookie quarterbacks coming in who haven't studied NFL tape, who don't know how to pick up an NFL offense yet. Those rookies dealing with the virtual offseason programs as opposed to actually being in the building and being on the field with their respective teams is going to be a little bit more difficult. I'm with you. I'm very interested in what the Broncos are doing this year. I think they're going to improve tremendously, and I'm excited to watch Drew Lock as the guy in
Big
Denver.
arm, little reckless. There's obviously he's NFL talent.
Right.
Is he NFL mature? Is he NFL disciplined? The talent thing's there for him. I'm just not sure. He lets a lot of it just go. He's just a let-her-rip guy.
Well, he's very young, so
Yes.
he's going to have to implement this new system, and like you said, just kind of tighten it all up a little bit.
Yes,
but
that's a good way to put it. He needs to tighten it up. Plays very loose.
Yeah, so the Warriors had an incredible run, winning 3 titles and 5 straight trips to the NBA Finals. But after Kevin Durant left, many believe the team's dominance in the NBA was done. Klay Thompson has already been out for a while as he rehabs a torn ACL. And in a short documentary by Kaiser Permanente on his recovery, he spoke about how he feels when people say the Warrior dynasty has run its course.
It just kills me inside when I see these other teams, so many talking heads, and some of my peers saying the dynasty is over. They had a great run. I have so much more to give this game, but patience definitely builds character.
Very dramatic.
Yes.
But look, I don't think that the Warriors are going to be irrelevant, but the NBA is going to look a lot different over the next couple years. It's not the same situation. Losing Kevin Durant is very significant. I'm not doubting that the Warriors aren't going to retool, but he's 1A best player in the league when he's healthy. So I know Kevin Durant's kind of been out of sight, out of mind. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the Warriors may not make it back to the finals again with Steph, Clay, and Draymond. I'm not saying they're going to be done. They're going to be irrelevant, and they're not going to be competitive, of course. But there's a reason why Kevin Durant went there. There's a reason that they wanted him there.
Yeah, the Warriors got a break. This is like they're just rebooting. Everybody got hurt.
Yes.
And it's the season that goes away. I mean, it'd be like if the NFL didn't have a season, New England would be like, oh, what do you know? We were able to retool. We didn't have to be bad for a year.
Right. Didn't have to get criticized.
You have to get
ridiculed.
crushed. And I mean, the Warriors, in a weird way, got a little bit of a scheduling break where, whereas LeBron, this is not good at all for LeBron James.
Well, they're two franchises in completely different situations.
Yeah. Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Great baseball writer Ken Rosenthal joins us next. The very latest on baseball's coming back. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch them. They have Korean baseball now that they can use some examples. That's a huge advantage. Major League Baseball, to me, gets to watch Korean baseball and go, okay, here's what to do, here's what to not, here's where the masks are, here's where the seating is. Ken Rosenthal next.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Ken Rosenthal, Fox Sports baseball writer and senior writer of The Athletic, which is just terrific, has been kind enough to join us today. We've got some questions about baseball. I read a story this morning, and it kind of confused me. It insinuated July 1st was not kind of the drop-dead date. It was the best-case scenario, and then I'm confused. If baseball is not willing to play at individual sites, they want to all go to their own stadium, and you're playing into November. I'm a little lost. So, Ken, thanks for joining us. Are the top players this morning, do you believe, on board to have a season?
Yes, no question about that, Colin. Everyone wants to play.
Okay.
And while there are certainly reservations with some of the plans that have been proposed, especially the quarantine plan, undoubtedly these guys want to do what they do normally. Like we all want to do our job, and that's play baseball in their case.
What's the primary pushback?
Health is the biggest question. How is Major League Baseball going to ensure the safety of the players? And that will involve, of course, testing. It will involve probably daily temperature checks, on-site personnel, all kinds of things. And if I was a player, that would be the first thing I'd be wondering about. And the other thing is going to be salary. And it's a little bit confusing, but basically baseball, Major League Baseball and the Players Union reached an agreement on March 27th to kind of set the parameters for a shortened or canceled season. And at that time, they agreed in a shortened season, the players' salaries would be prorated. So if you play half a season, you get half your salary. But now, with the likelihood, almost certainty, that games will be played at least at the start without fans, the owners are likely to ask for a further reduction, and the players' point of view is, hey, we already agreed to a reduction. We're not doing another one.
Oh, I totally get that. Best proposal you've heard, most realistic?
I like the Arizona, Florida, Texas plan,
So do
which
I.
is basically put 10 teams in each state, play regionally. You limit the travel, then you rotate, and you see as things go on if you can expand to home parks. Now, the preference of the owners seems to be to play in home parks. Better to televise from home parks, even without fans. More convenient for the players, no question about that, if you're at home rather than in another state. And it also would give a sign of normalcy to those different locales where the games are being played. But from a practical standpoint, we know Texas, Florida, and Arizona are open. And we know that, or opening, I should say. And we know that players, for the most part, are familiar with those places. They train there in spring training. So that seems to be practical, but it all depends, Colin. I hate to say this is a cliche by now, but where the virus takes them. Because if the virus, and there's an outbreak in Florida, for instance,
Well, suddenly Florida doesn't look so good. If you're planning on playing in Cincinnati, there's an outbreak in Cincinnati. You can't play in Cincinnati. So it's a really difficult needle to thread. And there are days I sit here wondering, how the heck is this going to even happen? But there is a lot of determination from both the players, the owners, and a lot of government officials to make it happen.
Korean baseball on TV, watching that as a template, has it helped?
It helps in the sense that you see what they're doing regarding social distancing, no fans, daily temperature checks, testing. That is all part of what would be the major league idea. But at the same time, that's a smaller country. They came back much quicker. And they had more rigorous measures in place because they can do that in that country. They can do better surveillance, which we don't allow here for infringement on our freedom. So it is a template, and it's more a template of the baseball, yes, that is. But as far as the country itself, that's a little bit of a different set of standards.
This morning, are you hopeful?
I am hopeful, and from the very beginning almost, Colin, I believe they are going to play. I just have always questioned how they're going to play, when they're going to play, just how this is all going to transpire. And I imagine as we go on here, once the season starts, and I wrote this the other day, fans, players, media, owners, everyone are going to have to get accustomed to the idea that this is not going to be a normal situation.
Right.
There are going to be cancellations, postponements, scheduling changes, inequities in the schedule. And we're all going to have to sit here and say, okay, it's baseball, though. We want to see baseball. We want to see games. And we have to accept and tolerate all of the inconveniences and different things that might result because they're going to happen.
20 to 30 seconds left. Is it worth it for the owners to have a 75-game schedule?
It depends on the financial situation with the players, obviously, and the owners would contend that they would need a further salary cut. But if you have a 75-game schedule with an expanded postseason, Colin, and you know, and I know that is where the money is.
Yes.
We both work for Fox.
Right.
So that would be worthwhile. Yes, 75 could do it. I don't know much below that if it becomes worthwhile, but 75 for sure.
Ken Rosenthal, The Athletic. Read him. I do. It's great. Subscription-based sports journalism. Ken, thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
Fox Sports. Yeah, 75, it may force baseball into shortening the season, which I think we've all agreed it needs to be shortened. Check it out, mdriverelax.com. 50% off, mdriverelax.com. You're probably freaking out. Chill, mdriverelax.com. See you tomorrow.
Hi, this is Paige Renee, and I have a podcast called Playing Around. I used to play professional golf. Now you see me flaunting my cleavage on the Instagram. We talk about golf. We talk about life. We get serious. We make it funny. You never really know where we're going to go with this, which makes it exciting. Also a bit terrifying because I am just telling all of my deepest, darkest secrets to everyone on this podcast because I have no filter. We're talking golf tips, golf advice, but not just that. We're talking about relationships, sex,
how to get a guy,
how to find a guy, how to keep a guy, how to find a pro athlete.
What's wrong with guys?
A lot, but we talk about it and we fix them.
Foot fetishes, creepy dudes, the scale.
Creepy Instagram comments. Are they a hit or a whiff? Then we also have TNA, not what you're thinking. That's tips and advice, boys.
Rats.
Find Playing Around on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We are all living in the ripple effects of history. A butterfly flaps its wings in China in the 19th century, and your Uber driver misses the turn for the airport. Or an eccentric genius invents air conditioning and changes the course of American politics. I'm Sean Braswell, host of The Thread, and I'm back with a brand new podcast presented by Aussie called Flashback, a series of stories of unintended consequences. Listen to Flashback on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.